Our next presenter is a programmer and artist who works for the Advanced Visualization Lab, animating science documentaries at the National Center for Supercomputing Applications. Your parents must love you. That's unbelievable. He also makes 3D animated short films and calls his mom every day. He recently awarded a tiny fraction of a visual effects Oscar for his work. I'm done reading the rest of this bio. He's got an Oscar and a Nobel Peace Prize for the work he contributed to the movie Interstellar. Maybe he could explain to us the plot. And most importantly, his face is on the side of a bus, and he looks very good tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage A.J. Christensen.
Hi. I made it to my senior year of high school before I really ever understood what the point of English class was. I finally had the right teacher who helped me find the answer on my own. It turns out the point of English is not to know what the author intended, but rather to guess what the author intended for the sake of our own creative tools. Equipped with these lessons, I decided to try to write a novel about monsters. I got some real writing experience before I gave up, and I learned in the process that it was hard to write details without some rhetorical depth. A creature needs to look like something, so why not something that evokes its role in the plot? Slight change. I had the same experience when I started animating. In animation, you have to create every detail that appears on screen. For instance, in college we made a film about the planets playing catch with the moon, and we decided not to give them arms. This led to the creative decision that they would catch and throw the moon with their gravitational orbits. This sort of thing happens all the time in Hollywood animated films. One of Pixar's frequent techniques is to use circles to represent soft, disarming characters and squares to represent rigid, tough ones. Think of Carl and Ellie in Up, Mr. and Mrs. Incredible, Wall-E and Eve, or Mike and Sully in Monsters, Incorporated. So we do a film festival in town called Pens to Lens, which you guys heard about, where we make films of screenplays written by students. A couple years ago, I made a film called The Goo Party, which was written by first graders. The main character was not given much of a description beyond the title of Mr. Eyeball. This descriptive name guided me to designing his body eyeball first. His eyelids were so expressive they became his lips as well. Since Mr. Eyeball was creating a planet for a whole race of alien goo people, I thought his body shape should reflect something regal. I considered a crown, a headdress, and a mane, but eventually realized he was a religious figure and modeled him after a pope hat. The goo people, I was afraid, would look like a bunch of boogers. We sat down and brainstormed all the kinds of goo we could think of: tar, honey, raw egg, drool, cheese, lava. And that helped us narrow down to a warm jewel tone color palette. These colors made them feel more pretty and a little more human. In another Pens to Lens film I made called Influence and Pressure, there was a tormented robot character. It was clear from the script that the robot had a big heart that he wore on his sleeve, so I wanted to make that part of the design. I originally toyed with the idea of making the robot shaped like an anatomical heart, but eventually settled on an egg shape because it showed that he was fragile. However, I did make his engine the shape of an anatomical heart and placed it in the middle of his chest. He was colored blue to show that he was friendly and depressive, and partway through the film, he painted a big lipstick heart around his face to bludgeon the audience with obvious symbolism. So this method holds for nonfiction characters too. This is a view of Saturn backlit by the sun. In the effects world, we would call this focal object the hero character. Although this shot is an homage to a NASA photograph, flying around the planet in 3D was a totally new trick that required careful design decisions. At my job at the NCSA, we make decisions like this every day. Caressing camera moves, lighting, lens effects, environments. When you spend all this time focusing on making every pixel count, on making intentional choices rather than incidental ones, it's hard not to start applying the same critical process outside of work. For example, a few years ago, my partner Keith told me to make him a new bookmark. He loves reading, so I decided it needed to feel intensely personal. I drew a design for a Pokemon he had invented called Shark Hippo, and then learned how to use the laser cutter at the Fab Lab to engrave Charcopo into a bookmark-shaped piece of wood. So a lot of people choose things they like as symbols of their personality. I realized some years ago that everyone knew that I liked dinosaurs, so I really took ownership of that. I find dinosaurs inspirational. They're kind of a weird mashup of imagination and logic. And because my friends know I love dinosaurs, I feel more free to enjoy them in public. Being a little bit weird in public comes naturally to me. I graduated with a computer science degree and started working for an art professor. I spent money on plane tickets instead of car payments when I was younger. I joined a burlesque troupe. I did some voluntourism in Rwanda, and I joined a nude figure drawing group. I also established a lot of patterns. I started collecting photos of state capitol buildings. Keith and I handmade Christmas cards featuring robots and dinosaurs every year. I got to know a lot of astronomers and visited planetariums to see our work. I was posting code on my blog and volunteering for 2 professional organizations for programmers. So all these characteristics I'd collected, a traveler, a programmer, an artist, an astronomer, a bohemian, led me to London to work for the effects studio Double Negative on Interstellar. I remain convinced that without any of these characteristics, I would not have been offered the opportunity, and I may not have enjoyed it as much. Keith and I knew London was temporary. I commuted to work on the tube not because it was the most affordable thing, but because it was iconic. We rented a flat with a cute red door because it was evocative. We visited the Cannes Film Festival because that's what filmmakers do. We reveled in injecting meaning into the trip. And as a really gratifying conclusion to it all, Double Negative won the Visual Effects Oscar. And that's how I realized it was important to foist meaning upon my life intentionally, even if it was seemingly arbitrary. So I offered this advice. It is not enough to wait for things to happen and try to extract meaning from them. Look to social awareness campaigns where there's urgent need for change. Perception matters. Black Lives Matter, Je suis Charlie, Transgender Day of Remembrance, the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. Do you guys remember Coney 2012? Yeah, of course you do. These are symbols, they're slogans, they're repetition and homage and suspense. And for people like Keith and me, activists living with meaning made all the difference last summer when the Supreme Court ensured equal marriage in America. So my advice, whether you make your life mean something political or personal or spiritual or beautiful, make sure that you take the time to make it mean something. Thank you.